you're dreading a round that's coming up. Your game's not in good shape. Perhaps you've had very little time, you've been far too busy. Perhaps something's bothering you. And what you're faced with is a potential embarrassment. Perhaps you feel you're going to be out of your depth. And you're simply dreading it. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be a shit show. And so what can happen is you just get in a negative cycle and your thoughts become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And many of us, particularly if we've very busy lives, young families, perhaps a lot of travel, we know exactly what that's about. And perhaps you're feeling even what you really need is a rest. Anyway, this is the position. You've a round coming up that you've been dreading. So what can be done? One of the first things is to do with the possibility of transformation. And if you look at the great stories of the world, what you find is the hero goes on, or heroine goes on a roller coaster of emotion, from despair to hope, from failure to success. And it is precisely this that seems to be available at any moment, the moment that renders the possibility of transformation. And that can be because something happens and externally, break or something that is good fortune. But it can also happen because something happens internally and you change your orientation. So it's worth just holding in mind that a transformation can be just around the corner. And indeed, on big journeys, you often find as what's called the dark night of the soul, or the dark night of the hero, which is when everything seems to be falling apart. Amazing scene in Star Wars, Princess Leia with Luke in just a horrible kind of pit of horrible metal objects and water. It just seems like there's no way out. But like in the stories, there is a way out. So that's worth just bearing in mind. The second is, and I find this quite helpful and can sound a bit strange, which has to do with the fact that we have an unconscious mind that's often a lot more brilliant than our conscious mind, a lot more intelligent. And one of the things I find that works for me is I just simply act as if I've got an internal guide. And for me, I like to imagine I have Shivas Irons, the whiskey drinking golf pro from Michael Murphy's book, Golf in the Kingdom, on my side. And it's in my imagination. But I ask him a question. And I tell him my situation and I say, I've no idea what to do. I need help. And I don't know how it works, but it's almost as if he's there. And it's almost as if the mind, having been prompted with the right kind of question, searches your database of experiences and comes up with something. It doesn't work in a logical or necessarily linear way, but it seems to work. So try that. Ask your inner guide. And in a way, the way Better Game Golf set up is it's about asking questions, but take it one step further and ask your own inner guide questions. And I had one recently where I was struggling with my driving, and Shivas, or my unconscious, just came up with just a simple organizing idea, which had to do with throwing a ball. Remember, you know how to throw the ball. That's incredibly simple. It was so far from my mind, but it just was like, it gave me what we call a body schema to organize everything in a helpful way. And I found it really helpful. A really simple idea that sounds simple, but it wasn't simple before. So the next is non-judgmental awareness. Just what is actually going on? Just get calm for a little while and say what actually is going on. And invariably it's not as bad as you thought, or the circumstance is not as bad as you thought. And a little technique that we used to use when I was doing creativity work was find value. Find 3 pluses to any idea or any situation or any experience. And it always had a funny effect, which is just reframed. We called it the itemized response. An itemized response, pluses and then turn negatives into directions. So just try that. What are 3 positive things about your game at the moment, and indeed your circumstances at the moment? The 4th thing that you can try is just reminding yourself of some basic fundamentals. You know, what are the fundamentals that work for you? Fundamental swing thoughts, fundamental structural, technical things that work for you. What works? And just go back to basics. Basic ideas as to posture and stance. And another is, even if you are in that circumstance, remember, this is a 5th thing you can do, follow the process. Don't be thinking about content. There's the distinction between content, what you're trying to do, and process, how you're doing it. And one of the things we do a lot of work on is pre-shot rituals. So just with this round coming up, this day coming up, just go back to your basic pre-shot rituals and do listen to the recordings and sections on pre-shot rituals if you haven't got one. I find I kind of evolve my pre-shot ritual all the time, but remember, you still have that. You don't have to think about the outcome. Think about the process. Process thinking works. Content thinking doesn't. And pre-shot ritual is the golfing articulation of following process and process thinking. And finally, it may be that there's an inner voice that's trying to get a message to you, and there's a lovely little section where Shivas Irons is advising Michael Murphy in Golf in the Kingdom, and he talks about the value of a negative thought. And Michael talks about a voice that's saying to him, you're not lined up straight. Line up again. And it keeps going on. You're not lined up straight. Line up again. You're not lined up straight. And this is the whole idea of golf as a metaphor. And in this particular case, the negative thought is getting a message through to him that he needs to cop himself on. And in his particular case, at that time, it was the realization that really his life had got out of control. He was working far too hard, and his life had become completely disorganized. So some of the time, the golf as metaphor idea is just basically trying to get a message through to you that stuff needs to be sorted out. That's nothing to do with golfing technique. that's to do with life in general. And I like that idea. Golf as a metaphor. It kind of reframes every round as a learning opportunity. And why not? So there we have it. Reframing the round you're dreading.